Pahlavi or Pahlavi denotes a particular and exclusively written form of various Middle Iranian languages. The essential characteristics of Pahlavi are the use of a specific Aramaic-derived script, the Pahlavi script, the high incidence of Aramaic words used as heterograms. Pahlavi compositions have been found for the dialects, ethnolects of Parthia, Persis, Sogdiana, Scythia, and Khotan, independent of the variant for which the Pahlavi system was used. The written form of that language only qualifies as Pahlavi when it has the characteristics noted above. Pahlavi is then an admixture of written Imperial Aramaic, from which Pahlavi derives its script, logograms, and some of its vocabulary. Spoken Middle Iranian, from which Pahlavi derives its terminations, symbol rules, and most of its vocabulary. Pahlavi may thus be defined as a system of writing applied to a specific language group, but with critical features alien to that language group. It has the characteristics of a distinct language, but is not one. It is an exclusively written system. But much Pahlavi literature remains essentially an oral literature committed to writing and so retains many of the characteristics of oral composition. Etymology. The term Pahlavi is said to be derived from the Parthian language word Parthav or Parthor, meaning Parthia, a region just east of the Caspian Sea, with the I suffix denoting the language and people of that region. The term has been traced back further to Avestan Parethu, broad, as the earth, also evident in Sanskrit Prthvr, earth, and Parthivi, lord of the earth. Common to all Indo-Iranian languages is a connotation of mighty. History. The earliest attested use of Pahlavi dates to the reign of Arsaces I of Parthia in early Parthian coins with Pahlavi scripts. There are also several Pahlavi texts written during the reign of Mithridates I. The cellars of the treasury at Mithridate Kurd reveal thousands of pottery sherds with brief records, several ostraca that are fully dated there, references to members of the immediate family of the king. Such fragments, as also the rock inscriptions of Sassanid kings, which are datable to the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, do not, however, qualify as a significant literary corpus. Although in theory Pahlavi could have been used to render any Middle Iranian language and hence may have been in use as early as 300 BC, no manuscripts that can be dated to before the 6th century AD have yet been found. Thus, when used for the name of a literary genre, i.e., Pahlavi literature, the term refers to Middle Iranian texts dated near or after the fall of the Sassanid Empire and extending to about AD 900, after which Iranian languages enter the modern stage. The oldest surviving example of the Pahlavi script is from fragments of the so-called Pahlavi Psalter, a 6th or 7th century AD translation of a Syriac Psalter found at Bulayak on the Silk Road, near Turpan in northwest China. It is in a more archaic script than Book Pahlavi. After the Muslim conquest of Persia, the Pahlavi script was replaced by the Arabic script, except in Zoroastrian sacred literature. This practice can be dated to the period immediately following the Islamic conquest. Script. The Pahlavi script is one of the two essential characteristics of the Pahlavi system. Its origin and development occurred independently of the various Middle Iranian languages for which it was used. The Pahlavi script is derived from the Aramaic script as it was used under the Achaemenids, with modifications to support the phonology of the Iranian languages. It is essentially atypical abjad, where, in general, only long vowels are marked with matralektionis, and vowel initial words are marked with an aleph. However, because of the high incidence of logograms derived from Aramaic words, the Pahlavi script is far from always phonetic, and even when it is phonetic, it may have more than one transliterational symbol per sign, because certain originally different Aramaic letters have merged into identical graphic forms, especially in the Book Pahlavi variety. In addition to this, during much of its later history, Pahlavi orthography was characterized by historical or archaizing spellings. Most notably, it continued to reflect the pronunciation that preceded the widespread Iranian lenition processes, whereby post-vocalic voiceless stops and affricates had become voiced, and voice stops had become semi-vowels. Similarly, certain words continued to be spelt with post-vocalic s and t even after the consonants had been debuccalized to h in the living language. The Pahlavi script consisted of two widely used forms, Inscriptional Pahlavi and Book Pahlavi. A third form, Psalter Pahlavi, is not widely attested. Inscriptional Parthian. The script was used to write Parthian language on coins of Parthia from the time of Arsaces I of Parthia, as well as inscriptions of Parthian and later Sasanian periods. Inscriptional Parthian script has 22 letters for sounds and 8 letters for numerals. The letters are not joined. Parthian version of Shapur I's inscription at Kaba Zartosht, Parthian, along with Greek and Middle Persian, was being used in inscriptions of early Sasanian kings. Shapur inscription in Naqshi-Rajab. Inscriptional Pahlavi. Inscriptional Pahlavi is the earliest attested form, and is evident in clay fragments that have been dated to the reign of Mithridates I. Other early evidence includes the Pahlavi inscriptions of Arsacid-era coins and rock inscriptions of Sassanid kings and other notables such as Kartir. This script contains 19 characters which are not joined. Coin of Ardashir I with inscriptional Pahlavi writings. Inscriptional Pahlavi text from Shapur III at Taqi-Bostan, 4th century. Kartir's inscription at Naqshi-Rajab. Sasanian relief with inscriptional Pahlavi monogram. Psalter Pahlavi. Psalter Pahlavi derives its name from the so-called Pahlavi Psalter, a 6th or 7th century translation of a Syriac book of Psalms. This text, which was found at Bulayak near Turpan in northwest China, is the earliest evidence of literary composition in Pahlavi, dating to the 6th or 7th century AD. The extant manuscript dates no earlier than the mid-6th century, since the translation reflects liturgical additions to the Syriac original by Ma'aba I, who was Patriarch of the Church of the East c. 540–52. Its use is peculiar to Christians in Iran, given its use in a fragmentary manuscript of the Psalms of David. The script of the Psalms has altogether 18 graphemes, 5 more than Book Pahlavi and 1 less than Inscriptional Pahlavi. As in Book Pahlavi, letters are connected to each other. The only other surviving source of Psalter Pahlavi are the inscriptions on a bronze processional cross found at Herat, in present-day Afghanistan. Due to the dearth of comparable material, some words and phrases in both sources remain undeciphered. Of the 18 characters, 9 connect in all 4 traditional abjad positions, while 9 connect only on their right or are isolated. Numbers are built from units of 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 20, and 100. The numbers chapter 10 and 20 join on both sides, but the numbers chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4 only join on the right, and if they are followed by an additional digit, they lose their tail, which is visually evident in their isolated forms. There are 12 encoded punctuation characters, and many are similar tothos found in Syriac. The section marks are written in half red and half black, and several documents have entire sections in both black and red, as a means of distinction. See also, Final Accepted Script Proposal. Pahlavi Psalter. Psalter Alphabet. Book Pahlavi. Book Pahlavi is a smoother script in which letters are joined to each other and often form complicated ligatures. Book Pahlavi was the most common form of the script, with only 12 or 13 graphemes representing 24 sounds. The formal coalescence of originally different letters caused ambiguity, and the letters became even less distinct when they formed part of a ligature. In its later forms, attempts were made to improve the consonantry and reduce ambiguity through diacritic marks. Book Pahlavi continued to be in common use until about AD 900. After that date, Pahlavi was preserved only by the Zoroastrian clergy. The word ran Sahr, spelled Ylnstr, in Book Pahlavi, coin of Ispabod Khurshid with Book Pahlavi writings. After Khosrau I, Book Pahlavi, instead of Inscriptional Pahlavi, was being used on coins. Stone cross with Book Pahlavi writings. Valliyapalli Church in Kottayam, Kerala, India. Logograms in both inscriptional and Book Pahlavi. Many common words, including even pronouns, particles, numerals, and auxiliaries, were replaced by their Imperial Aramaic equivalents, which were used as logograms. For example, the word for dog was written as klb but pronounced sag, and the word for bread would be written as Aramaic lm but understood as the sign for Iranian nan. These words were known as husvarish. Such a logogram could also be followed by letters expressing parts of the Persian word phonetically, e.g., btr for pitar, father. The grammatical endings were usually written phonetically. For example, to you was spelt lk. A word could be written phonetically even when a logogram for it existed, but logograms were nevertheless used very frequently in texts. Many husvarish were listed in the lexicon Frahang I Pahlavi. The practice of using these logograms appears to have originated from the use of Aramaic in the chancelleries of the Achaemenid Empire. Partly similar phenomena are found in the use of sumerograms and akkadograms in ancient Mesopotamia and the Hittite Empire, and in the adaptation of Chinese writing to Japanese. Problems in reading Book Pahlavi as pointed out above. The convergence in form of many of the characters of Book Pahlavi causes a high degree of ambiguity in most Pahlavi writing, and it needs to be resolved by the context. Some mergers are restricted to particular groups of words or individual spellings. Further ambiguity is added by the fact that even outside of ligatures, the boundaries between letters are not clear, and many letters look identical to combinations of other letters. As an example, one may take the fact that the name of God, Ormuzd, could equally be read Anhoma. Historically speaking, it was spelt Whrmzd, a fairly straightforward spelling for an abjad. However, W had coalesced with N, R had coalesced, in the speaking of certain words, with both N and W, and Z had been reduced, in the speaking of certain words, to a form whose combination with D was indistinguishable from A, which in turn had coalesced with H. This meant that the same orthographic form that stood for Whrmzd could also be interpreted as NHWMH. The logograms could also pose problems. For this reason, important religious texts were sometimes transcribed into the phonetically unambiguous Avestan alphabet. This latter system is called Pasand. Literary dialects. None was written in Pahlavi exclusively, and inversely, the Pahlavi script was used for more than one language. Still, the vast majority of surviving Pahlavi texts are in Middle Persian, hence the occasional use of the term Pahlavi to refer to that language. Arsacid Pahlavi. Following the overthrow of the Seleucids, the Parthian Arsacids, who considered themselves the legitimate heirs of the Achaemenids, adopted the manner, customs and government of the Persian court of 2 centuries previously. By the end of the Arsacid era, the written Aramaic words had come to be understood as logograms, as explained above. The use of Pahlavi gained popularity following its adoption as the language script of the commentaries on the Avesta, propagated by the priesthood, who were not only considered to be transmitters of all knowledge but were also instrumental in government. The use of Pahlavi eventually reached all corners of the Parthian Arsacid Empire. Arsacid Pahlavi is also called Parthian Pahlavi, Chaldeo Pahlavi, or Northwest Pahlavi, the latter reflecting its apparent development from a dialect that was almost identical to that of the Medes. Sasanian Pahlavi. Following the defeat of the Parthian Arsacids by the Persian Sasanians, the latter inherited the empire and its institutions, and with it the use of the Aramaic-derived language and script. Like the Parthians before him, Ardshir, the founder of the Second Persian Empire, projected himself as a successor to the regnal traditions of the first, in particular those of Artaxerxes II, whose throne name the new emperor adopted. From a linguistic point of view, there was probably only little disruption, since the Sassanids had inherited the bureaucracy. In the beginning, the affairs of government went on as before, with the use of dictionaries such as the Frahangi Pahlavi assisting the transition. The royalty themselves came from a priestly tradition, and as such would have been proficient in the language and script. More importantly, being both West and Middle Iranian languages, Parthian was closely related to the dialect of the southwest. Arsacid Pahlavi did not die out with the Arsacids. It is represented in some bilingual inscriptions alongside the Sassanid Pahlavi, by the parchment manuscripts of Oroman, and by certain Manichaean texts from Turpan. Furthermore, the archaic orthography of Sasanian Pahlavi continued to reflect, in many respects, pronunciations that had been used in Arsacid times and not its contemporary pronunciation. Sasanian Pahlavi is also called Sassanid Pahlavi, Persian Pahlavi, or Southwest Pahlavi. Post-conquest Pahlavi. Following the Islamic conquest of the Sassanids, the term Pahlavi came to refer to the language of the southwest. How this came to pass remains unclear, but it has been assumed that this was simply because it was the dialect that the conquerors would have been most familiar with, as the language and script of religious and semi-religious commentaries. Pahlavi remained in use long after that language had been superseded by modern Persian, and Arabic script had been adopted as the means to render it. As late as the 17th century, Zoroastrian priests in Iran admonished their Indian co-religionists to learn it. Post-conquest Pahlavi is also called Zoroastrian Pahlavi. Unicode. Inscriptional Pahlavi and Inscriptional Parthian were added to the Unicode standard in October 2009 with the release of version 5.2. Psalter Pahlavi was added in June 2014 with the release of version 7.0. Book Pahlavi is proposed to be encoded in Unicode. The Unicode block for Inscriptional Pahlavi is U+10B60U+10B7F. The Unicode block for Inscriptional Parthian is U+10B40U+10B5F. The Unicode block for Psalter Pahlavi is U+10B80U+10BAF. Bibliography. Andreas, Friedrich Karl, Bruchstück einer Pahlavi Übersetzung der Samen aus der Sassanidenzeit. Sitzungsberichte der Königlich Preußischen Akademie der Wissenschaft, Philosophisch-Historische Klasse, XLI, 869-72. The Parthians, in Godrej, Feroza J. A Zoroastrian Tapestry, New York. Mappin. Boyce, Mary, Textual Sources for the Study of Zoroastrianism, Chicago. UC Press. Dabar, Baumanji Nusawanji, The Persian Rivayat of Hormazia Framars and Others, Bombay. K.R. Karma Oriental Institute. Dalla, Manakji Nusavanji, Zoroastrian Civilization, New York. OUP. Henning, Walter B. Altiranisch. Handbuch der Orientalistik. Erster Abteilung. Banda v. Iranistik. Erster Abschnitt. Linguistik, Leiden Köln, Brill, Geiger, Wilhelm, Kuhn, Ernst eds. Grundriss der Iranischen Philologie I1, Boston. Adamant. Gigno, Philippe, Pahlavi Psalter, Encyclopedia Iranica, Costa Mesa, Mazda, Kent, Roland G. Old Persian. Grammar, Texts, Lexicon, New Haven. American Oriental Society. Mackenzie, N. A Concise Pahlavi Dictionary, London. Curzon Press. Mirza, Hormazd Archaeology, Literary Treasures of the Zoroastrian Priests, in Godrej, Feroza J. A Zoroastrian Tapestry, New York. Mappin, pp. 162-163. Nyberg, Henrik Samuel, A Manual of Pahlavi, Part 2. Glossary, Wiesbaden, Otto Harrisowitz. Menachery, Professor. George Pahlavi. Crosses of Kerala in granite objects in Kerala churches, glimpses of Nazrani heritage, Allure, Saris, South Asia Research Assistance Services. Weber, Dieter, Texti, Ostracar, Papyri and Pergamenta, Corpus Inscriptionum Iranicarum. Part 3. Pahlavi Inscriptions, IV, Ostracar, Papyri, London, SOAS. West. Edward William, Pahlavi Literature, in Geiger, Wilhelm, Kuhn, Ernst, Grundriss der Iranischen Philologie 2, Stuttgart. Trubner.